Good morning, and we're in the book of Ruth today, and we are going to go through it the next couple of days. But one thing I wanted to point out is last week we went through the Judges, and is, in a word, probably harsh, with only a few things. Maybe Deborah, or even Deborah, is all about the battles and the wars and things. And we ended on probably the harshest thing, which was Samson. Samson was not a wonderful person in himself, and yet he fought for Israel, and a lot of not nice things went on. Now we're going to get into Ruth that happened sometime during these Judges. And it is more tender. And we see that people interact and react to each other. And we'll get into this. Let's look at the book of Ruth first. What is the book of Ruth? The book of Ruth describes the history of the family of Naomi and Elimelech, who lived during the time of the Judges. It is one of the only two books of the Old Testament named after a woman. The book highlights the compassion and love shared by Naomi and her daughter-in-law, Ruth, as they navigated the challenges of widowhood. A central theme in the book of Ruth is redemption. Ruth was a foreigner, childless, and a widow, which left her in complete poverty with no support. Despite her circumstances, she chose to follow Jehovah and became part of his covenant people. Ruth eventually married again and was fully accepted as an Israelite and was blessed with children. Given this theme of redemption, it is important to note that Jesus Christ, the Redeemer of the world, was a direct descendant of Ruth. Keep that in your mind as we read this and think of the choices that they make. They don't know that they're going to be, and that their posterity is going to lead to Jesus Christ. But their decisions were important anyway. And so they're going to go into Moab. And what is Moab? The country of Moab. I'll just look at that really quick. It's going to be, the Moabites were descendants of Lot, and his firstborn daughter. Remember way back, Lot is a brother-in-law, I believe, to all of a sudden my mind's gone blank. You know how that happens. Abraham, and he has a really hard time, it seems, but the Moabites come from these people. The Moabites often clash with the Israelites in various wars. They worship Chemosh, a deity that may have at times been associated with the practice of human sacrifice. The land of Moab was east of the Dead Sea in present-day Jordan. So that gives you an idea, and we heard about them, I believe, in Kings. They did have some clashes with them. So we're going to get into it. And it came to pass that when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his sons. So they're moving because there is a famine in the land. And the name of the man, and one thing to remember is the difference in, you can hear it already in how this is written to how Judges was written. Judges was a history. This is a story. This is a story about somebody living during that time, and you can see that while Judges was an overview of things and a history, this is a story and a touching one, and so we get more of a feeling for it. And this is one of my favorite stories, actually, in the Old Testament. And the name of the man was Amalek. I think if we go to Amalek here in the footnote, it tells you, my God is king. So his name already gives away how he must have felt about his Savior. And the name of his wife was Naomi, which means pleasant. And we'll get to that later in the chapter. And the name of his two sons was Mahon and Shelon. And interesting enough, I looked up those names, and they basically mean sickly and morose or whatever. I think morose is my word, but basically they're not in the best of health, it sounds like, if they named him that. I don't know. Anyway, that's the names they gave him. Kind of sickly, pining type of names. I don't know why they got those names. And the name of his two sons, Shalon, Euphrates of Bethlehem, and they came to the country of Moab and continued there. Amalek, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her two sons. So there she is, already in a different country with two sons, and they took them wives of the women of Moab. It sounds like Amalek died before they got married, but I'm not sure if that's true, but either way, they get married, and the name of one was Orpha, and the name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. So they're 10 years into their marriage. They must have had quite a good marriage. I mean, from the sound of it, they were still living the Israelitish type of life, even though and the wife would usually take upon them. I guess what this is showing is, one thing the Lord said is that if they intermarried, that they would fall away, and we see that in Kings where people would intermarry and they would fall away. But this story is an interesting one because it doesn't seem as much that they had fallen away from the truth. It's hard to tell with the little knowledge that we have, but let's see what happens. And Mahlon and Chilion die, as also both of them. It doesn't say how they died, but if their names or anything, they probably weren't in the best of health through their life. And the woman was left of her two sons and her husband. That's Naomi. And she rose with her daughters-in-law that she might return to the country from the country of Moab, and for she heard that the country of Moab, in the country of Moab, how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. In other words, the famine's over, you could go back. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. So all 3 of them are going back. Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you. It sounds like they took her there. They wanted to make sure that she got there safely. Return to her mother's house, and the Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. In other words, the way that you've treated me and treated my children, my sons, has been so wonderful. But you need to live your lives. If they got married when a lot of them seem to have gotten married, they'd still be in their late 20s, most likely. And the Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you, in the house of your husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. Can you hear the peace, the things that they are feeling towards each other here, the love that they have? And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. So both of them are saying, we'll return with you. And Naomi, I love Naomi's reasoning here, said, Turn again, my daughters. To her, they are her daughters. She's accepted them fully in the house. Not saying daughter-in-law and all this. They're her daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that ye may be with your husbands? That they may be with your husbands? Am I going to have more sons and you're going to get married to him? I don't think so. Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am old. I am too old to have a husband. I'm not even married right now, and I'd have to get a husband, and I'm too old for that. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband, also, tonight, should I also bear sons? Like, is it going to happen as soon as I have a husband, I'm going to have 2 sons for you too? Don't think so. Would you tarry for them till they were grown? Okay, if I do have the sons, you have a 20-year difference on them. That's not going to happen, is it? Would you stay for them for having husbands? Would you do that? She's seeing them as that these girls want to stay with her because she is the sweetest woman, which her name means sweet. Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. It feels that way when you have such a loss, that everything is. I don't think she's saying, oh, look, the Lord is a horrible person. She's saying, and I think it's a saying that would have been in this time, the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. I'm having the worst of luck, or whatever you want to call it. What she's saying is, this is not how I planned my life, and I wouldn't have. And this is how I don't want you guys to be dragged down with me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. Both of them, remember that. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth claved unto her. In other words, she stayed with her. She held on to her. Orpah understood what was being said. I always feel a little bit bad because it's not her story. She goes back, and it's not because she was any less faithfulness. I don't think that. I think it's because she understood what was being said, and Naomi expected them both to do that. It would have been a shorter chapter if they would have, but or a shorter book. But Ruth stayed with her, and Orpah did what her mother-in-law had told her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. Now we've got a scripture that anybody that went through seminary should know. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so unto me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. This is a faithfulness, and it's a faithfulness to Naomi, but also to God. And I think that's important to see, that Ruth has taken upon her all of this faithfulness. Remember, she's been with him for over 10 years now, and she's been able to see what it means to be faithful to the God of Israel. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. It's like, well, it's not worth, I'm not going to argue about it. You can come with me. So they went until they came to Bethlehem, and it came to pass that they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them, and they said, Is this Naomi? Now this is where her name comes into play. She said unto them, Call me not Naomi, which is pleasant, call me Mara. And if you look under the footnote here, it says, the name given by Naomi, to Naomi by herself, means bitter or very sad. So instead of being I'm not pleasant, I'm sad. For the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. What a visual. Why then call me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me? And if you look in there, it tells you, humbled me. And the Almighty hath afflicted me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. Now, one thing I just want to point out, when the Lord told Israel that they're going to be afflicted by these people they left in the country, there are stories in here. Remember I forget her name now, the one that in Jericho helped the spies. She would have been somewhere in this mix. there are people who accept the gospel. Remember, there's a mixed group that came out of Egypt, and there's a mixed group of people here. There are righteous people no matter where we look, but we have to know that they are living the gospel as well. And that's what Ruth is someone that is living the gospel. And we'll see more of her in the next couple of chapters.